I spent the first year of my coaching waiting to be ready. Here's what I should have done instead. Before we begin, just a quick note. If you're inspired by today's conversation, do check out the coachbusiness.school, where you'll learn about everything that I do, from the accreditations for taking you from a complete beginner to expert coach, life coach, executive coach, alcohol-free performance coach. If you're already a qualified coach, do check out our specialisms such as alcohol-free performance coach, positive psychology performance coach, and also our MBA mastery courses. All right, so what would I have done differently if I had that first year of coaching all over again? Here's some of the big learns. The Yoda trap. I'm going to call it the Yoda trap. I made an assumption because when I first trained as a coach, there was no concept around advice giving or not. It wasn't broken apart as such. So I just thought coaching was some cool tools and techniques that I learned through training in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, with the legend, the co-founder of NLP, John Grinder, the guy that taught Anthony Robbins. And I think a bit like Anthony Robbins, I just learned all these new tools and techniques. I went, this is brilliant. You can run your mind in such a more optimal way, leveraging some of these insights, but it still wasn't really sort of coaching. It was just a little piece of coaching in many ways. It was tools and techniques that you could apply within coaching. But the wraparound of that course in many ways was that you're a fully baked coach, only I wasn't. So it hadn't differentiated between me giving advice and me doing those cool coaching tools and techniques involved within NLP. So I fell into the trap of thinking I needed to know everything about everything. And I couldn't coach anyone that I didn't know in terms of their work background, for example, because how would I know how to give them the right answer if I didn't know everything about everything? So it sort of stunted my development and growth. And then, of course, as I evolved as a coach, I started to figure out actually that's completely the wrong thing to do, because the next point I wish I'd known, in that first year, was that advice often kills coaching. I've seen it so often. That's what really skilled coaches, and why I train all our coaches, we don't give advice, only very deliberately and very skillfully. I'll come back to that in a second just to clear that up. But what I found in that first year of coaching is, because I was still in this Yoda trap, I thought I could, apply some of those coaching tools and techniques and then give them my advice, essentially. Tell them what they should be doing, because it was sort of obvious to me at times, especially when I was coaching people in my specific industry, the broking world. It was much more of a mentoring role. But what I started to notice was this. People would reflect upon the things they were struggling with, and I would cogitate and tell them basically what they should do. That was part of our coaching, as well as all the tools and techniques. And what would happen very often, they'd go, okay, great. And that was it. The conversation just ended. It was like they'd just completely onboarded what I'd said to them. There was no more struggle or wrestling with this thing or trying to pull it apart for them to figure it out, to gain those real transformative insights. It became this lazy exercise. They came to me with a problem, I told them what to do, and they said, okay. That was it. And guess what happened? Not a lot. They didn't get results because it was outside of them, right? It was through my map of the world, and all our coaches, we spend a lot of time training on this. I didn't know this at the time. Again, the next thing that I wish I'd known in that first year of coaching, the map is not the territory. Whilst NLP taught me this initially, it didn't quite dawn on me in the way that it did post that first year. So I just want to highlight that again. What that means is, when you understand the map is not the territory, everyone on this planet's got a different set of beliefs or map of the world, essentially. And what brilliant coaching does, it helps individuals fill in the blanks in their individual map so they can see options that didn't exist before. I think that's the essence of great coaching. The mistake of advice giving is that your advice can only ever come through your map, which might make perfect sense to you. In this instance, the advice I was giving made perfect sense to me, but on the receiver of that advice, they've got a completely different map. Therefore, that advice might not work for them at all. But in that type of relationship, which too much coaching is initially built on, that's not professional, where it's more advice giving than anything else, often the receiver of that advice, the coachee in this instance, feels that you're the senior person. You've got more wisdom than them. So instead of them challenging your thinking or their own thinking, they just accept the advice and go, okay, great, I know what to do. And then don't do it most of the time because they've got a different map. Massive trap. And when I figured that out, I started to get incredible results for clients because I started to help them mine their own maps, challenge their own thinking to filling the deletions and distortions inside their mind, of which our minds are littered with. And in doing so, it became a transformative experience for them because then they saw options that weren't there before. They weren't just listening to me and I was telling them what to do through my map, which didn't work. They were doing the work on their own maps. I was helping them challenge in their thinking that created and filled in some of those deletions and distortions and outright untruths, which litter our mind all the time when you start to look in there, as I do with clients all the time, as well as my own mind. And in doing so, they had these transformative experiences because they started to see things they couldn't see before. And with that, I started to get much better results, and people started to talk about our coaching sessions with their friends and family members and colleagues to say, actually, we just did something today that felt transformative. It wasn't just that normal conversational, I got in a room with someone, I told them my problem, they told me what to do. This guy, i.e. me, the coach, really understood the process and allowed me to challenge my own thinking. And now I've seen something I couldn't have seen before. I've seen an opportunity or an option that just wasn't available to me. I would never have got there on my own. You know, it's great coaching when a client has that awareness of, I would never have achieved this on my own, or talking this through with a friend, or getting advice from a colleague. This is a totally different world. That's what coaching is. It's transformative when you get it right, which is really important. The next thing I wish I'd learned in that first year, and some of these things take time, right? And I'm maybe being a little bit harsh on myself, but I like to think all the coaches that we train through the Coach Business School, and I've said this many, many times before, are where I was probably after about 3 or 4 years in terms of professionalism, in terms of understanding. It took me that long to figure out a lot of things that I'm telling you now because I just didn't have the right kind of training in many ways. I started with NLP, it was great for all those little tools and techniques, but the wraparound understanding of how to grow a coaching business, how to create transformative coaching sessions was completely devoid in many ways. And I really had to learn that the hard way through trial and error, which took a lot of time, as opposed to the coaches that train with us. We've got all that in the course, right? 6 months. So out the other side of that, they're fully baked, ready to go. So the next thing I wish I'd known, I undercharged for far too long. Now, there's a couple of bits to this. In those early stages for me, it wasn't, and nor is it today, all about the money. That's not why I do this. I do it because it fills me with meaning and purpose. I've just learned to be really skillful with it so that it pays the bills and allows me to live the life that I want to lead, right? What a gift. That's the ultimate win in life, I believe. I read a great book just recently by Jim Collins. Jim Collins really famously wrote Good to Great, one of the greatest business books of all time. And this book that I read of his, I can never remember the title. So as great as he is at writing books, he can't be that good at writing titles, because this is a title that continually slips my mind. But if you search Jim Collins, you'll find it. And it's a book much more about meaning and purpose, essentially, and why people do what they do. So he studied for 10 years. This is the sort of level that he goes to. Some of the most prominent figures in history that have really made a difference. And the reason he studied prominent people was because the data was there. Like the average person that does, these incredible things or lives a really meaningful life, invariably there's not enough data. But obviously significant people, there's biographies and reports and whatnot that you can get your hands on. So it's not saying that you have to be all magnificent and do amazing things. It's basically just to try and find what makes humans tick. But one of the huge takeaways was this, that they spun the arrow of money. So rather than them growing these businesses just to make money, the ones that were truly successful on every level, like a life full of meaning and purpose and contribution and joy and all these things, actually used money or income to facilitate what they love to do, which was run this business or be involved in this movement or thing. Rather than thinking, I'm going to start this to make lots and lots of money and then I'll be amazingly happy. It was like, no, I'm going to actually build this in a way that it generates the income that I need so I can keep doing my thing. Whether that's my art, my music, create this business, do good in the world. And it so happens, whilst just focusing on that and generating the income they needed to generate or give them the time and freedom to do the thing they loved, many of those businesses went on to generate billions in income. And I think this is a major point when it comes to coaching. It certainly is for me, that it is much more about generating the income you need to live the lifestyle that you most want to lead. That's all you need, right? That's all we need to thrive. Like, there's billionaires that are so desperately unhappy and stressed out all the time. Well, what's the point in that? Do you know what I mean? Build a life that you most want to lead and then use coaching to fund it. And then if it supersedes that and there's spare cash in the bank, brilliant. But if it's enough to fund it, whatever that looks like for you, and we've all got a different number, right? What an unbelievable gift. And that's what I've been more or less doing for the last 10, 12 years, really, of my coaching career. So it started really slowly. That's the point I'm making. I wasn't really there to try and, hey, let's just turn up the income levers for the sake of it. I just wanted to learn the craft. Now, there is a massive, massive psychological hurdle that every coach must overcome. This is really, really important. And it is this. At some point, you need to get in a position where someone will pay you for your coaching. That is a huge psychological barrier. I see lots and lots of coaches hide behind free. That altruistic, because we are altruistic, I think, in our nature as coaches, but there is a limit to that. And a limit to that is that for lots of people, if it's genuinely altruistic and you're financially set up in a way that you do not need to charge for your coaching, I'll agree with that. But equally, people won't get the results they will if they pay. That's a fact. People never value free in the way that they do when they've invested in something. So if you're like being altruistic, I think you're doing people a disservice by not charging, right? Because it's free. Therefore, they don't show up all the time. They're not as committed. They don't get the results. So by keeping it free, you're not actually helping them because you've lowered the barrier so low. You're actually doing them a disservice. So there should be some fee attached to it of some sort, even if it's a minimal amount in certain circumstances. So I just want to get that across and clear. Equally, lots of people that sit in that group of free coaching do so because they're too scared to charge. Not because it's purely altruistic. It's like, I've got too much fear around the fact of asking for money because I've never done that before, or maybe I've had a different background. I've been a stay-at-home parent, or I've run a busy house, or in my career that was never a thing. I just worked as, a cog in a big machine. I never had to go out there and actually try and sell us something. So people get stuck in the free coaching world and they miss the opportunity that is to cross that psychological barrier of being paid a something for their coaching. So I set the scene for that because that's how I felt about coaching. Very often it was, I just want someone to pay me a something, to know there's some value in what I'm doing. So I started out by charging £25 per hour, £25 an hour, which was a massive over delivery for the coaching that I was providing. Albeit in those early years, it wasn't top class coaching. I'm going to hold my hands up. I had a lot of learning and growth and development to do to really get well drilled and skilled. Hence why I went back and did a degree and then a master's degree specifically in coaching, psychology and positive psychology. To get all the science as well as all the practical of NLP plus all the experience wrapped together, then I really knew what I was doing. But that took me, again, those 3 to 4 years really by the time that was ready. So with that in mind, those early stages, it was so important for me to cross that psychological barrier. And I'm just going to say this now to everyone listening. If you're in the free camp at the moment, even if it's super altruistic, still, it's such good practice to turn it into paid. £25 an hour, £10, whatever it is. The money doesn't matter at this stage. This is the point. What does matter, the psychological hurdle of going from free to paid. Because once you've done it once, you can do it again. And then even if you start like I did at £25 an hour, then you can just slowly but surely and incrementally, as you feel more comfortable and confident and competent, move that lever should you wish. Really, really important, this. However, I got stuck a little bit too long in that space. I almost started to coach effectively at £25 an hour as if it was free coaching. For the same reason, I crossed the initial barrier, didn't put a lot of thought into it. It was much more altruistic for me. I was just trying to learn. I just loved being a coach. I loved being in the space. And obviously I was very, very busy running my own full-time commodities brokerage at the time. Like most people, right? It's the truth of it. Most people that come to coaching are not full-time coaches from the outset. They're running a busy household, a busy family. They've got busy careers, and we're trying to like squeeze this thing in around it. So I think you can get quite easily caught in a trap of either coaching for free for far too long or coaching at really low income levels for far too long. Whereas if I was to go back and do it again, I would start small, really small, exactly almost as I started all those years ago. £25 an hour, £50 an hour. And by the way, I'll come back to the hourly rate, which I never ever charge an hourly rate. I'll tick that box for you in a second. Just again to cross that psychological barrier. But once I'd stepped into that, I wouldn't stay at that level for very long. And again, we'll have to do a separate podcast on this. And I've done lots of podcasts on pricing in terms of coaching. So just do go back and look through some of the earlier episodes, because pricing is very nuanced. It depends where you're showing up, the type of clientele that you're working with, and the pricing, there's the whole range in there, right? From people that will just about be in a position to invest something to those that invest millions in coaching, right? And everything in between. So there's no one size fits all with it. But the point being, I think it's a really valuable exercise in that first year to really test the boundaries of price, right? Because you can experiment with it, cross the psychological hurdle to charge a something, and then slowly, incrementally throughout the year, start to play with your pricing. Now, what's really important about this, early stages coaching, an hourly rate is totally fine just to get some experience. But again, if I knew what I knew now, I would not run an hourly rate in those early stages for very long. I ran that hourly rate for 4 years or more. And I think it, again, put a lid on my coaching opportunities. What I would do instead is just get momentum, cross the psychological barrier, have some one-to-one, one-off coaching, hourly rate type stuff just to build a bit of momentum. If that helps you get some clients on board just to warm up. But then I would move everything to a package of some sort. And that's all I do now. So I only work with people for 90 days. We have 6 sessions over those 90 days, effectively a session every other week. It's standard. Now, sometimes there's flexibility in that depending on the circumstance. We might front load and then go monthly, or we need more sessions and it's bespoke to the client. But let's just say vanilla out the box, someone comes to me and says they want to work with me as a coach. This is what it looks like. We're going to work together for 12 weeks. We get together every other week for 6 sessions. There's our 12 weeks. And I'll back that up with WhatsApp support. Pretty much a real simplistic level in terms of the functionality of what I now do as a coach. That's what it looks like. That took me years and years and years really to get to that position. I was sort of stuck in that hourly rate, one-off session. People would turn up, not turn up. Wasn't deepening our relationship together. Some people would keep coming back and paying. But almost you had to renegotiate, resell every single time you finished the session. It was exhausting for me, and I'm sure it was for them. People didn't show up. They wasn't as committed to those one-off session, or I might book another one-off session, or will I, because I'm going on holiday type scenario. Anyway, big learn. I'm only going to work with people if you are committed to a longer term relationship with me, so I can get to know you, you can get to know me, and we can achieve your outcome. Massive, massive win. Now, next point I wish I'd known when I first started out, I didn't used to sell the outcome, I used to sell the bits in the middle. So I was selling an hour of my time. That is a massive, massive mistake. Here's why. No one wants it. No one wants an hour of your time, is the truth of it. I couldn't care less about an hour of your time. What they actually want is the outcome that you can help them achieve. That's the only bit you ever sell. And that took me a long while, because again, that's marketing learning. And I wasn't in the marketing space. I didn't care about marketing. I cared about coaching. I think that's why a lot of coaches get stuck, because they're trying to figure out the coaching thing. But the marketing thing is so critically important that they don't really understand the marketing bit, and they're like stumped as to why they're struggling on this hourly rate, one-off session type coaching that's just not working for them. And they're like offering more and more value, more and more things. You're going to get this from me and that from me, and bells and whistles, and people are still not buying it. It's like, why is that? Because they don't care about bells and whistles. What they care about is the outcome. It's all they care about. That's why people are in the room with you. Can you help them transition the menopause and live a life full of meaning and purpose? Oh, I'm going to have to call that a wrap because I've got to go into a meeting. Let's just pause it there and I will come back. I'm back with you after taking my meeting. That's why alarm went off. Luckily, I'd set that alarm. Anyway, I can't remember where I was. So I'll pick up at a point that I think is remotely interesting. The next thing I wish I'd known in those early days, months, years even, is about niching and the importance of niching. I was so lucky that I stumbled into my niche at about year 3 or 4, as mentioned, when things really started to take off. I think that's the most important part of coaching in many ways, is to find a niche. Now, in the executive space, your previous careers, for example, are great niches, right? It could be that you work in the legal sector, the public sector, the private sector, in insurance, or whatever it might be, stay-at-home parent, whatever it might be. I think that gives you a niche, and obviously you can niche within those niches, right? You can find little sub-niches. You might just work with women in insurance that are over 50 that are senior leaders, whatever it might be. But a career is a niche, just want to highlight that. And equally, you've got your individual niches, right? Those stories that are already part of who you are, the obstacles you've overcome, the drink that you put down, the redundancy that you've handled, the burnout that you overcome. These are our niches. This is the most powerful part of coaching. And for me, that was pure luck rather than skill, because I happened to have gone alcohol-free. I fell in love with that space and thought, this is brilliant. I'm just going to focus my coaching in this area. As soon as I did, everything took off. Everything took off. It got easy to share. Podcast appearances started to come my way all the time, because people want to speak with an expert, not so much of a generalist. And when you niche, you become expert really quickly, because it's much easier to become an expert in a much smaller pond. That's the secret of niching. I train all our coaches in this. It's so incredibly important. And you've got everything you need in your locker already. And I wish I'd known that maybe in those first 3 or 4 years. As it transpires, it's all turned out really rather well. But what I will say, through those first 3 or 4 years, I almost gave up loads of times. So often it was like, oh, do you know what? Will I continue with this? I'm so busy. I'm running all this big business. I've got family commitments, life commitments, and I've got a coaching session that I'm not really prepared for. Well, I just let this go. So close too often. And I'd say that happens to so many coaches, especially in those early years. And that's why I wanted to share this podcast with you today, just to try and help you accelerate some of that progress, so you don't find yourself in a place where you do give up, because too many coaches do give up, right? They give up on the edge of greatness. Anthony Robbins talks about this, that invisible line that very often we get so close to, and people turn around just at the moment of greatness. Now, for example, in my case, I could have easily given up. Had I given up, none of the organizations that I've created exist in the coaching world that have net had this wonderful impact on millions of people now, globally. I mean, I feel so grateful for that and so fortunate, but I was that, if you're watching me on YouTube, it's a tiny, tiny amount, so close just to packing it all in. That edge of greatness, as it were, to do something worthwhile with this wonderful coaching. So I'm hopeful that some of these insights and the rest of this podcast, do go back and check out all the earlier episodes as well, are just helping you make those accelerated gains that are going to keep you coaching for long enough to really make a difference in other people's lives first and foremost, and hopefully fund the life that you most want to lead. Then we've nailed it. What an absolute gift. Thank you as always for joining me. Don't forget, do check out coachbusiness.school, not .com, .school if you want to come and train with us to get accredited, or if you're already accredited, go and check out the specialisms. Come and train with me as a positive psychology coach, an alcohol-free performance coach, or check out our Mastery MBA program if you want to learn more about business and marketing. Until next time, keep it up. Your coach, Andy.